Alright. How's she going, eh? Today I would like to address a few things that I think have become critically important with the way things are going in certain areas around the nation. So I want to be super clear about this right off the hop. I don't necessarily take any particular political stance. I realize that some people think that's a sort of cowardice, but to me it's because my life is very much I work on mechanical equipment all the time, and I take those sorts of thought patterns with me into the way that I approach life and society at large and figuring out problems. So, one of the things that you're trying to do when you're working on mechanical equipment is to anticipate additional issues while you are fixing current issues, if that is at all possible. It's certainly possible in politics and with statistics. So I think we are doing America and Americans a great disservice by discussing one side of things and refusing to acknowledge that any other side exists. Or, as I like to sometimes tell my wife, a sort of surface level evaluation of things where we only look at the surface. We don't think about unintended consequences, but they don't need to be unintended consequences. We can consider things more carefully, and yeah, that's where I think you're seeing a lot of the hostility in America right now. People no longer, I'm not talking about you people necessarily or anybody specifically, and I don't want to group people in. I'm a highly individualistic person, but I'm just saying individuals, let's put it that way, in this country, and I don't think it's the vast majority of people. In fact, I think America as a whole is one of the greatest countries. You can babble on about all this bullshit about, it's everybody's fault and all this institutional sort of hobgoblins that you can't actually identify. You can't show me with statistics. If you can show me with statistics, I'm happy to change my mind. But what I'm really talking about is this insane idea that we all share some collective guilt because of horrible things that happen that individuals do. So this is where the flaw is. We need to get back to treating people as individuals. There is nothing more repulsive to me than I served the time for your crime. It's morally reprehensible. I just can't get to that position. And my brain just doesn't work that way. It's a 1-step, 2-step, 3-step, 4-step type thing. I'm happy to make sacrifices for the community and the people around me at large. What I am not happy to do is stay silent and have some overly emotional, not very well considered opinion crammed down my throat because I dare to speak up. And that is where we need to get better as a society. I'm not even going to point anybody specifically out, because here's the thing. You individually can make your decision about who you think is stifling that conversation. I have my opinions. You probably have your opinions. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But the real focus needs to be on actually communicating with people. Not being emotionally manipulative. Not doing this song and dance. I find the media repulsive. I'll be brutally honest with you. I think they're incredibly dishonest. And even if they're not blatantly dishonest, I think that they spend a lot of time giving us the mirror image of the truth as opposed to the truth. Or giving us a narrative because they think that the general public is too stupid. You and I are too stupid to handle or reason through these things. So the sort of dogmatic, fervent, zealot, crazy horse shit needs to just settle down, okay? And then we can't get so tied up in emotions that we fail to realize the consequences of what our actions, like the consequences that are going to arrive as the result of our actions. So I see what's going on right now with the whole climate in the country. It's not the whole country, really, because like where I live is perfectly fine at this particular moment, as far as I can tell. But as far as the country, what we're doing and what we're seeing is more of the same old shit, as far as I'm concerned. We're having one side of the discussion, we're completely omitting the other side, and we are demonizing entire groups of people. I don't care what your retarded justification is, it doesn't really matter to me. There's no place for collectivism in the world. Not in that regard, anyway. Not in the judgment of groups of people as guilty because of some behavior of an individual. I'm all for cleaning up institutions if that's really what we're doing. But again, we need to be honest about the consequences of the actions we take. So there's a thought that I identify an issue, I put into practice some sort of solution to that issue, and it has no further consequences on anything else. We don't think about any of that stuff. We just leave it at that. We're going to solve this tiny issue. We're not going to think about any of the ramifications of it, and we're not going to have the whole discussion before we go ahead and make a plan and execute it. That strikes me as an issue. I'll tell you another thing that strikes me as an issue that I find morally abhorrent, quite frankly, is the idea that you get to apply your morals to people selectively based on your opinion. I hate to tell you, those aren't morals. Okay? Those aren't morals. I'm going to selectively decide who I'm going to apply my morals to, right? Like, so this one group does something bad, it's fine. You know, they're victims. This other group does something bad, they're horrible. Whatever it is. I'm not defending any actions. I don't even want to get into it. People will have their day in court. I do not know all the consequences of removing qualified immunity. It doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. You know, let's hold everybody accountable. And that includes the politicians. And I think that we're maybe missing that point, because I'm sure they're not removing qualified immunity for themselves. But, you know, that's another discussion altogether. But, you know, we need to get better at thinking through the consequences. So what's going to happen as a result of what's going on with the political climate right now? Well, I'll tell you what my assessment is. I think, and this is, I want to preface this so that I'm not saying anything, like my purpose isn't to be inflammatory. It's actually that this is where my thinking has led me, right? It wasn't a complicated train of thought, really. Just over the last 4 years, we've been demonizing police officers as a whole, or certain portions of the population. I'm sure there's plenty of horrible individual police officers, There may need better institutional training. I'm not going to argue any of that stuff. But what I'm saying is that there's been this pattern of demonization of entire groups of people, and I find it repulsive. I can't handle it. Well, I can handle it because I'm not an emotional basket case, but I think it's wrong think. Not wrong think like you're not allowed to think it, but wrong think like I think you haven't actually thought through very well. I think you stopped at the surface level. I think you think, hey, we're going to demonize the police officers and everything's going to get better. Well, I think you're wrong. Here's why. I think what's going to happen is police officers are very clearly now, they've been sent the message that you are not wanted in these communities. We think you're all a bunch of racists. And I just don't see it going well. I think the violence and the tension and the hostilities in these communities will likely get worse. I mean, if there's no more proactive policing, if it's going to be completely reactive, we're going to see a lot more damage. So this isn't so much a justification of bad behavior, because I can't speak for other people. I just think we got to get out of this way of thinking. We have to get out of it. If that means getting off social media or whatever it means, then that's what it means. You know, don't let your emotions be manipulated. Try and, I realize this is hard for some people. I mean, my wife is a very emotional person compared to me, but I've even managed to sort of bring her around to, you need to take a philosophical approach to things in life. You need to think clearly. You need to think rationally. You need to look at statistics. That's some other stuff that we seem to just continuously be ignoring. Okay? There's two sides to this story. It's not a one-sided story. I don't care what the mainstream narrative is or whatever. There's two sides to the story. So you're welcome to go ahead and go out and research what those sides are. I suspect some of you already know what they are. But my motives are, just to be clear, I think a more rational discourse in society, because people have this idea that they are the arbiters of truth, that they know what's best for everybody, that they are gods amongst men, that they are infallible, that if they were in positions of power, they would do everything right. This is a completely insane belief. It's an insane belief from, as far as I can tell, people who haven't really had too much struggle in their life. I think that's also where all this weird guilt for things that you don't have anything to do with comes from. It's like this, when your life has been too easy, when you've had it made for too long, you start to take those things for granted. You feel guilty for some reason that you were born in your circumstances, as if that was something you could control. And like I said, this doesn't, I have no definitive answer about where we should go. I think the general public will come up with that. I think a bunch of individuals will each make up their mind, and whatever conclusions they come to will follow from that. But all I'm really here asking you to do is just to try and think things through clearly and have a process to your thinking, right? Because emotional thinking is very jumpy. It's very inconsistent. It's very hard to arrive at the same results. And I'm also asking you to extend your morals to everyone. That whatever courtesy you would extend to somebody you like, you extend that courtesy to somebody you presuppose you wouldn't like. So if your value is, truth, honesty, fairness, whatever it is, that there are no exceptions to that. As soon as you start adding exceptions, you start becoming the arbiter of your own truth. This is how people manipulate themselves. I don't know if I should really get into this, but anyway, I know a lot about manipulating myself. I spent 10 years doing it. I'm not going to go way too into my past, but you can probably imagine that I had some struggles as a younger man with just issues, divorced parents, you know. We're probably led a lot of people like you and your friends, or it might in the future. So I think we're all sort of fooling ourselves. The position we all need to start from is that we are all monsters to some extent. I know it because I've very clearly seen it. But I think a lot of people, maybe just for whatever reason, if it's been you haven't struggled enough, or you know, you've always had whatever support you needed, or whatever it is. So I beg of you, realize that there is some darkness inside of you. This is not a religious argument. I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, but I'm kind of a weird atheist because I don't tend to weigh left. To me, you don't get to do atheism but then drop the rationality when it comes to everything else. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. You know, consistency. Have consistent values. So, anyway, this is pretty ranty, but you get the gist of it. I don't want to leave you with any opinions. I realize that opinion pieces get more notice than everything else, but I just want to tell you that apply that, you know, steadfast logic to things, and be consistent, and look at both sides of things, and think about the future consequences of the actions we take as a society now. Because I'm not entirely sure that they're going to, it all depends on what happens. I'm just saying, I can tell you with what's already happened that I can tell you what would happen if I was a cop, because I'm not a bad individual, but I can tell you that I wouldn't be putting my life on the line anymore. There's just no way. So I get lots of people are police haters and whatever, and I don't really have a major stance on that. I'm just asking people to use their brains. You have it for a reason, and you know, treat people as individuals. Those are the two overriding messages here. Use your brain to think deeper than surface level, and respect people as individuals. That's the only hope we have. The collectivism, I don't care what side it's on, has to stop. Or it has to be ignored. It has to be shunned out. I'm not talking about censorship. I'm talking about shunning. It's a very useful feature of society. We shun people we deem unacceptable. I think it's actually a helpful practice. It lets people know what you're doing is not socially acceptable. I think that's what some of the protesting was about. I don't have a problem with protesting. I do have a problem with burning businesses and people's lives down. The answer to an individual instance of atrocity is not to create 8,000 times more atrocity. So anyway, with that, I'll stop babbling, and this really isn't meant to offend anybody. It's just a way that I approach these sorts of things. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying, think more deeply. Anyway, that's all I got for you today, and I needed to sort of get that off my chest. I've been thinking about the madnesses that are going on, even though I don't think most of America is really that up in arms. But Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in mechanical stuff. That's what it's going to be. It's not going to be a bunch of political rants, which I tried to stay as away from as possible. This is more on the first aspect of how you're going to change your thinking if you want to be good at sort of mechanical stuff, or the sort of thinking that you need to be doing if you're going to be going into mechanical trades and it's going to be something that you're good at, is that sort of methodological approach of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what are the consequences of each step, what possible branches can go out from there. So anyway, like I said, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.